Hello and welcome to Let's Review. Life is strange. I don't think anyone in their right mind would try and deny that, because let's face it, life is pretty strange. It's at once the most wondrous and terrifying thing we've ever encountered. Adolescence possibly even more so. And it's very unusual to find a game that's actually willing to really dig into that idea. While also throwing in time manipulation, because why wouldn't you? But of course the question becomes, is the game actually any good? Well, to answer that, we start as always, with the gameplay. Life is Strange follows in what I think can now be dubbed the Telltale school of adventure game making, focusing heavily on story, on character, and on how your decisions affect things. But it does throw in one very interesting wrinkle for puzzle solving: time manipulation. Life is Strange controls much like your standard adventure game, so you can wander around and you can find various objects to interact with. Now this is a fairly early puzzle from about half an hour into the first episode. Our objective is to get these three girls to move so that we can actually get into our dormitory. Now, the first and most obvious thing to do would be to abuse the sprinklers, so let's turn up the pressure on the sprinklers.
What the hell?
Causing them to get splashed.
Are you kidding? Look at this. Chill, Victoria. It's just water. Yeah, water on my cashmere. Do you know how much this fucking outfit costs?
Oh yes, and if you're offended by swearing,
Can't
there's a
even
lot of
chill
this in
on
this
the steps.
game. Now, you would think that would be sufficient to get them out of the way, but no, they've just shimmied off the steps, and now they still won't get the heck out of our way. However, the game is about to give us a clue in the form of the paint can. So what we can do is we can use our time reversal mechanic, which is just activated by holding down the right mouse button, and I can speed it up a bit by holding shift. So I'm going to go back to before I even opened the thing up, so they're still sitting down. And what I'm now going to do is tamper with the paint can. Which means that when the janitor climbs the ladder, which will take him a little while to get to because he's not that fast, but that's okay. When he attempts to hang it, that paint is going to fall. Now, if we just let it fall, it's going to splash harmlessly away from them. So, what we need to do, which you'll probably find out through multiple bits of trial and error, because I did, we then activate the pump,
What the hell? Are
which
you
forces
kidding?
them to stand up.
Look at this. Chill, Victoria. It's just water. Yeah, water on my cashmere. Do you know how much this fucking outfit costs?
So we've seen that. We go out there. Now they're standing there. Which means that when the paint falls, it's going to fall right on her. Or at least close enough to, well, ruin her cashmere completely.
No way! No fucking
You
way!
okay, Victoria?
Oh, Samuel is sorry. Wet paint is not good for hair, nope. Sorry.
Get the hell away from me, weirdo.
And while that's a fairly
hold on.
simple
Look at
puzzle
some
that makes
towels.
use
I'll
of
be
the
right back.
time mechanics,
Move your ass before
it
I
is a pretty good
Work.
example of what can be done with it.
Max, bitches.
That is, obviously, to all intents and purposes, the most basic puzzle. As I said, it's the first one that actually makes use of the mechanics. But they do let you do some interesting things with it in the future. There's also an awful lot of conversing with people in this game. So, for example, I could go over and talk to Kate, possibly, if I go around here. Or she may just ignore me. No, talk to her.
Kate. Hey, Max.
So
How did you like
we
class
can
today?
ask her about the class,
I don't
and if we
remember.
decide, no, forget it, I don't want
I
to bother
guess
with
I
this,
don't care about much of anything today.
sometimes
Is
it'll let you
there
rewind
anything-
out of it,
Max, I'd
sometimes
like
you
to
actually
be
have to
alone
wait
if
until
you
the
don't
end of the
mind.
conversation.
I'm sorry.
Now, she didn't seem very happy to talk about that, and if she wanted to be just left alone, then we can take us right back to that point. Sometimes we'll encounter additional conversation options whereby, for example, earlier in the game, you can be asked a question in class and you don't know the answer, but somebody else gives it. You can then time travel back to the point at which you were asked the question and give the answer because you now know it. It's a pretty simple mechanic, but it's one that really does work very, very well. And fundamentally, that is it for the gameplay of Life is Strange. The gameplay isn't terribly complicated, but it does make excellent use of its time manipulation mechanic, which is also used when picking dialogue options. Every time you make a major decision, the game will always remind you that it's possible to go back and pick the other path if you decide that that was the wrong move. And I really like the ability to see that. It lets you choose more in-depthly what's going to happen, because you see the short-term consequences of your decision, and you have to decide if you can live with the long-term consequences as well. Frankly, I haven't seen this mechanic this well implemented since the Prince of Persia series, and let's be honest, I really love the Prince of Persia series. Overall, I'm very happy to say that in the gameplay department, Life is Strange does everything that it's trying to do pretty much perfectly. Life is Strange follows the character of Max, an 18-year-old girl who's currently attending college at the prestigious Blackwell Academy. Max's life is about what you'd expect for such a student, until one day she witnesses something horrific and discovers that from somewhere she's gained the power to control time. She is understandably a wee bit freaked out at first, but it doesn't take her long to realise that with this ability she can change events, from the small things like getting the right answer in class to the big things. And when I say big things, I'm not kidding, because Life is Strange deals with some pretty damn serious subjects. Serious to the point of being triggering? Possibly. I'll be honest, I can't say what's going to be triggering to each individual. Some of you may be able to handle it without issue, some of you will not. But I will say that Life is Strange understands how serious these issues are, and it treats them with the certain amount of respect that they deserve. It doesn't pull any punches, but it does attempt to handle them as well as possible. So they're not just thrown in for shock value then? Thankfully, no. All of the characters are really quite well written, and they have enough depth to them that you can almost always see their point of view. Even the characters you're meant to dislike, you can understand where they're coming from, and in some cases even agree with their motivation. Well, apart from one who I really want to pin to the floor and crush his knees and his elbows to powder. Whoa! Where exactly did that come from? Sorry. Life is Strange has a character who is probably the easiest person to hate I have seen in a damn long while. But it also has a lot of characters who are pretty easy to like as well. It doesn't take long for you to find out that Max actually used to live in this town before she and her family moved away, and now she's come back in order to attend the college. And as such, she ends up bumping into Chloe, who used to be her best friend when she was younger, and these two have really, really great chemistry together. They are really fun to watch, and frankly, there's a reason why half of Tumblr seems to be shipping them as a couple. Yes, but isn't that what Tumblr does with all character combinations? Not all combinations. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, Tumblr's never shipped Aurora from Sleeping Beauty with Gimli from Lord of the Rings. Perhaps, but I guarantee you if we had more viewers, then the fan art would exist within a few days. Yeah, it would. Regardless, the character dynamic between these two characters is really excellent, completely regardless of whether or not you actually ship them. And the rest of the characters are pretty damn good as well, even if, well, he could outline their characters pretty damn easily. Ooh, could I? Well... No. You've done it like 3 weeks in a row. Just take a week off. Take a break. But it's fun. Not for me. Look, it's really rather difficult to actually talk about this game's story without going into spoilers, which I don't want to do. All I will really say is that I love the way that this game plays with consequences. When you make a decision, it really will affect how things play out in the future. And I really love seeing that. It's too often just a minor change. Here, the changes are fairly significant. And all I can really say is that, in the grand scheme of things, the story of Life is Strange is pretty damn excellent so far. From a graphical standpoint, the game really isn't that impressive, but as a result it's also not that much of a system hog. It has its own art style that works for it, which I'll be discussing momentarily, but honestly, graphically speaking, there's not that much to complain about. One thing I will note is that quite often the lip syncing just doesn't seem to match up, especially on a lot of the more minor characters. It's not a massive problem, but you might find it a little disconcerting at times. I really quite like the art style of this game. It's got a certain slightly surreal painted look which matches the atmosphere pretty damn perfectly. And as a result, everything just feels really right. The only complaint about the art I really have is that for some reason, whenever you pick up something to look at it closer, like say a photo or something of that ilk, it's usually stylized to the point where you can't really tell what it's meant to be. It's an odd decision and one that doesn't really work for me, but it's a pretty minor complaint, all things considered. So overall, the art is pretty damn good. The audio is pretty excellent right across the board. The original music works pretty well and establishes a really nice tone, and the licensed stuff, while not to my personal tastes, works fine. Again, it does what it's supposed to do. The sound effects likewise are pretty good, although nothing exceptional. The voice acting, though, is really, really good, especially between Max and Chloe in some of their quieter moments, and you really do get a feel for the friendship that these two share. Overall, all I can really say about the audio is damn fine job to everyone involved. So, did I enjoy Life is Strange? Yes, I did. Should you buy it? Yes, I absolutely think you should. Life is Strange is one of those rare cases of a game that really can be considered unique. It takes an old formulae and does very interesting things with it, and at the end of the day, that's really all you can hope for. While some of the content it contains is of an extremely dark nature, to the point where some people may consider it triggering, it handles it with the respect and care that it deserves, and I have absolutely no problem recommending it. Let us hope that parts 4 and 5 live up to the standards of the first 3. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I hurt his feelings earlier. I'd better apologise. I'll see you later.